When you first move to your island in New Horizons, there's nothing there. You and two villagers who have moved to the island with you have to learn to make do with the basic amenities. You pitch a tent, and you have to craft all of life's comforts. This gives the game plenty of opportunity to give players a real sense of progression as they develop their islands. Since we start with nothing, it's our jobs to fill in the space, grow the economy, and create cultural points of interest all over the island. Building development is a big part of the gameplay and progression. Previous Animal Crossing games have featured their own share of facilities, but none have taken a direction quite like New Horizons. We have to grow the island from nothing and attract interest from museum curators and business owners. In total, there are 7 different facilities players have access to from the island. You start with 2, Resident Services and Dodo Airlines. The others are the Museum, Nook's Cranny, Able Sisters, a campsite, and Harves Island. Dodo Airlines is your connection to the outside world as well as the post office. It doesn't ever upgrade during your playtime, but the travel options do expand slightly as you play the game. One funny quirk about this building is that it does determine what color items you can redeem with Nook Miles at the Nook stop. It can come in 4 different colors, but as of right now, the color and look of the building can't be altered. Dodo Airlines is one of the most static buildings on the island. Resident Services paints a different picture. It starts off as a tent with a crafting bench, a small shop run by Timmy and Tommy, and a CEO there to help guide you through your new life. They will help you with your basic needs, but as you develop the island and start attracting more and more residents, the needs of the island begins to increase. That's when Tom Nook decides to expand and hire some extra help. After an upgrade, the Resident Services building leaves tent life and becomes a proper building and gets updated from dirt floor to brick floor. Along with that, Isabelle is here to offer additional services like your island rating and change your town flag or town tune. The new building also signals the start of the hourly tunes in the game. The update to Resident Services really signifies a shift in your island. It gives more of a small town vibe, and it feels like it's ready to grow. It actually kind of feels like you've gotten to the island to the point where you typically start in Animal Crossing games, and the work to get there feels very satisfying. After 1 year, there's only one upgrade to Resident Services, and it takes place in the first couple weeks of the game. I wouldn't mind an additional upgrade that introduces some new surprises. Specifically, I'd love to have our home customization options greatly expanded. Resident Services is only the starting point, however. Players are able to expand the island's culture and economy, too. One of the first places that starts is with the museum. But the museum works in a much different way than it ever has in New Horizons. I always found it kind of funny that you move into a small town and there's a giant empty museum waiting for your contributions. It made no sense to have such a huge empty building in town. New Horizons has you earn the museum, and it starts with attracting a scholarly owl. After donating 5 creatures to Tom Nook, he sees the potential for a museum. He calls Blathers up, and Blathers pitches a tent to research the island himself and determine if it's a place truly as lush as Tom Nook has described. In New Horizons, the museum is something that's earned instead of given. This is the first time we see the museum go through its own stages. It starts off as a tent with nothing to display. It gives Blathers a much more explorative persona and looks adorable both inside and out. After donating enough to Blathers for his research, he finally decides he should update to a full building. This building adds exhibits for bugs, fish, and fossils. You can finally get a look at the creatures and fossils you've been handing to him. As it fills up, the displays also become more decorated and scenic. Once again, after reaching another threshold of donations, the museum will upgrade one final time to add an art exhibit. A jolly sailor by the name of Red will begin to visit us and bring a collection of rare works of art. Of course, you may not always get lucky with old Jolly Red, but his first piece of art does trigger the upgrade. Between building the initial tent and 2 upgrades beyond that, the museum is more interactive than it's ever been. It truly feels like progress as you unlock each new aspect, and they all make sense. You start without a museum because you're the first to settle on the island. From there, the first exhibits are focused around the natural wildlife. Finally, it grows large enough to display rare imports. Each update to the museum feels earned, and it really grows the collecting gameplay. Nook's Cranny is another staple of the Animal Crossing series, but this is the first game that doesn't feature that shop from the start. Instead, Timmy and Tommy start out by selling you things from Resident Services. Eventually, they will express interest in building a store, and this is done in a truly unique way. In order to build, they ask you to collect and provide materials. They ask you to supply 30 pieces of wood, softwood, hardwood, and iron nuggets. Instead of simply appearing one day, the players are tasked with collecting the resources needed to build. It is such a great way to make the act of adding a shop more engaging. It also gives players a bigger sense of pride and ownership when they finally see Nook's Cranny on their island. The next upgrade is still exciting, but a bit underwhelming. This upgrade feels like earlier Animal Crossing games. Buy enough things and wait enough days, and the store grows. It's also the largest size the shop will get for now. On one hand, it's sad to see that the shop can't get any bigger, but on the other, it really wouldn't make sense to expand it with the current catalog. It's just too small. New Horizons made a significant change to shopping by introducing crafting. For one, it gave players a more active role in collecting items they use for decoration. In previous games, players really had to rely on the shop for items used to decorate. With crafting, the catalog was split in half between shopping and crafting. With so many items dedicated to crafting, there aren't enough items to necessitate a bigger shop. Sure, I think it would be great to see more than 5 or 6 items on display, but we already see a lot of repeat items as it is. If a shop were to upgrade, we'd probably see the same 7 to 10 items on display instead of just 5 or 6. I think the day we get an expanded catalog is probably the day we're going to see Nook's Cranny finally upgrade. Able Sisters is another important shop throughout the Animal Crossing series. Mabel starts out as a weekly visitor on the island. She brings a small assortment of clothes and accessories to test out the market. After enough sales and visits, she decides the economy is strong enough to open up a shop. There's no upgrade to Able Sisters at the moment, but the shop does give us access to a lot more clothing, which is in pretty short supply when you first start the game. I do wonder if we'll ever see Label join the family business, or an expansion that includes Kicks. While the museum was earned through the wildlife and Nook's Cranny was earned through resources, Able Sisters is earned through the economy. It truly feels like the final piece to prove that you've masterfully developed an island that is capable of a booming economy and culture. The campsite further shows off the desirability of your island. Tom Nook asks you to build a campsite to attract more visitors and possibly convince them to move to the island. It gives your island a more recreational feel alongside the small town vibe that the other buildings provide. There are currently no upgrades to the campsite. The final facility is Harves Island. This one is accessible through Dodo Airlines after Harvey has visited and told you about Photopia. This cabin on a private island is a space to create scenes for photo shoots with your villagers or compatible amiibo. It's more of a bonus playground feature that has only really had one event that gave you extra items. There are no upgrades, but I do hope that it is used more often in the future to expand our items and let us see more special characters that currently aren't in New Horizons. As far as building development goes, you can expect to have every building built and fully upgraded within the first 2 months of the game. After that, there isn't much change outside of the seasons. There might be new stock of items or clothing, or new contributions to be made to the museum, but the buildings have felt pretty stagnant since then. You can always move them around your island and redecorate, but their general functions remain the same. This is a shame considering how active a role you played in building them up in the first place. At the start of the game, every new building felt like such an accomplishment. You worked so hard to make it appear on the island. You provided the resources with your bare hands, you helped them find a space on the island that would suit their purposes, and you made it their home. I feel like New Horizons did such a good job of giving you a sense of ownership and pride over its buildings that appeared. Unfortunately, there aren't any more buildings to add beyond this. The game truly shined when we were tasked with earning each building. I still think there's a lot of potential for expansions to the existing buildings or even new buildings. As long as we play an active role in earning these new facilities, it can create even more satisfying experiences beyond the ones we've long passed. Thank you so much for tuning in to this review of building development in Animal Crossing New Horizons. Stay tuned for more Animal Crossing content and Nintendo content, and be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you all next time. Bye!